everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before I get into my usual monthly wrap-up kind of stuff, I did just want to go ahead and say Black Lives Matter. I will be linking in the description petitions to sign, places where you can donate money. I know that this video in and of itself is not purposed around the issue, but I wanted to go ahead and put those out there so people could contribute to different causes. I'll also go ahead and link a video where it's one of the ones with a lot of ads. You watch it, the person doing the video donates all the money to different Black Lives Matter organizations. And so I just wanted to say that I do stand with Black people on the issues that are going on in the nation right now with police brutality. I'm horrified at the situation that we're in right now. I can't believe that it is a political statement to say that Black Lives Matter. And, you know, I myself have been signing petitions, donating money, doing what I can for myself to contribute to fighting these issues. And I just want to encourage anyone watching this video to vote when you're able to, because, you know, all our stuff on social media and all our stuff, all of our money to organizations, all the petitions and stuff, at the end of the day, what's really going to end up making the biggest difference is going to be our votes in local and national elections. So if you are able to vote, make sure that you're registered, get out and vote in the primaries, all that good stuff. That being said, I still want to go ahead and do my monthly wrap-up video. But yeah, I did want to put that out there for sure. All right, so let's jump into the books that I read in May, as usual, in no particular order. First, I'll go ahead and talk about I read 2 of Carrie Fisher's books in May. I read The Princess Diarist and Wishful Drinking. They're both very similar, just teeny tiny little memoir types of books. I did really love these. I'm a huge Carrie Fisher fan. I've always loved her. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So reading these books and getting to see a different and more personal side of her than I ever had was very interesting. Getting to know her, or feel like I knew her on a more personal level. These books are written, they don't have the best ratings on Goodreads, and I understand why. They're written very conversationally, kind of almost stream of consciousness. They kind of jump all over the place, but I really liked them. It's not a very serious read. It's kind of, if you've ever wanted to sit down and have a drink with Carrie Fisher and kind of pick her brain, I guess, about her life, I feel like these books would be entertaining for you, as they were for me. And I'm excited to read more books by her. It's really cool to get to see her talk about her struggles with substance abuse and mental illness, as well as her time as a child growing up in a family that was very famous. So yeah, those are Carrie Fisher's books that I read. I liked those. Next, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Supernatural short stories. I've been working on reading this short story collection since October. I picked it up because I thought it would be a nice Halloween time read, and it took me forever to finish it. It's edited by Joshua Perry, and I think he did a really poor job of it. He chose a lot of stories that weren't interesting, or just that were really slow paced. And also, I don't know if this is just a theme of more gothic type horror, but a lot of the stories were told from the perspective of, you got introduced to this person you thought was going to be the narrator, and then they walk into a tavern at night or something. They meet another traveler, and the other traveler ends up telling the ghost story, and then you flash back to the person that is recording the events, and the story didn't happen to them. And every story in the book was like that, and the trope just got so annoying after 2 or 3 stories. So I think this collection could have been edited better. I think there are better stories out there. They're, like I said, they're gothic, they're older short stories, so I kind of figured they'd be a little bit meatier, the language would be a little less easy to read, but this was just so boring, so poorly collected. So yeah, I don't recommend that one. Another book I'm not going to talk too much about, but because I've already filmed my next video for the month, it will be on this book, The Trial of Lizzie Borden. I really did enjoy this book, and so my next video will talk more about a summary of The Trial of Lizzie Borden. I also read in May Tempests and Slaughter by Tamora Pierce? I'm sorry, I meant to check on how to pronounce her first name before I made the video, but I didn't, so we're living with our choices. I have read a lot of her books, like when I was younger, about Tortall. This is a newer series that she's starting, the new Mayor Chronicles. This book, I thought, for Pierce's normal writing was pretty disappointing. Because a lot of her books tend to be, they're young adult fantasy, and they tend to be focused on this one central character, kind of a coming of age story, so there's not really as much tension and as much of a arc with conflict and resolution as some books, but I find in her other books there is some kind of overarching tension that gets resolved at the end, something that kind of like makes you want to keep reading to see how this event goes. But this book was really lacking in that. It was really just a coming of age story with not much tension, not much conflict at all, just kind of like the day-to-day life of a young magician going to magic school, basically, in her fantasy world. So I think I gave this book 2 or 3 stars. Let me check. I ended up giving this book 3 stars just because her writing is still beautiful. Her characters are still really likable and engaging. And I am very excited still for the second book in this series. I'm hoping that this book has set everything up well. We know our characters. We know the world that they're in. So I'm hoping that the second book, after we've got all this like more boring stuff out of the way, the second book will be able to dive in with bigger conflict and more oomph, shall we say. Also in May, I read The Whisper Man by Alex Norris. I rated this book 5 stars. I thought that this was super. I just really loved this book. It was creepy. It was like true crime. It was just a very spooky book, and I feel like a lot of books that I read that are thrillers or something don't really scare me, or they can be really tense, but they're not really scary. But this one I felt was, and I really liked it. So I highly recommend it if you're into any kind of like horror or true crime, stuff like that. I think this will check all your boxes. I really enjoyed this book. The next book that I have is Nyxia by Scott Rentgen. Anyway, this is the first book in a trilogy. I have the next 2 books in the trilogy already. I'm excited to go ahead and read those. When I first started out this book, it's a YA sci-fi. I find that YA books are really hit and miss, and I feel like YA sci-fi is like really like it's either good and I love it, or it's trash and I hate it. I've got another YA sci-fi book to talk about after this one, and it's on the other end of the spectrum. This book, when I started out reading it, I thought I wasn't gonna like it, but after I got a few chapters in, I got really invested in the characters, really invested in the story. I think I'm so excited to read the next couple of books in the trilogy. I think that it's going to be a really cool I want to say like political intrigue kind of story is what I've got going on. It's this corporation sending teens, basically, that's set in the future, and this corporation is sending teenagers out into to a planet in space, and there's this mysterious material on the planet called Nyxia that they're sending these teenagers to mine. And as they're traveling to this distant planet, they're being trained to use Nyxia. They have to send teenagers because that's the deal that this company has made with the basically not alien life forms, because it's their planet, the indigenous species on the planet say that they won't harm children. So they're sending teenagers out to mine this Nixia material, which is really interesting. That was what at first I thought I wasn't going to like about the book. It can be like liquid or solid, and they train the kids on this mission to manipulate Nixia with their minds. And at first I thought that was like really gimmicky. It didn't make sense, and it's still kind of, I mean, there's some suspension of disbelief here, but it's still a really cool book, and so I'm really excited to see where the series goes. The first book covers their travel from Earth to the planet, and their training, how that all goes, and the second book will be them actually on the planet, so I'm excited to see what that's like once they finally get there. The other YA sci-fi book that I didn't even finish this one. It's the first book of the year that I DNF'd, was Carve the Mark by Veronica Roth. I only read half of it. It was so incredibly boring, I couldn't make myself finish it. And I was really, at first I was really kind of disappointed in that, because I mean, I've read some bad books this year, but I've always like kind of struggled through, because I'm really trying to reach 100 books for the year, so I hate to like get involved in reading this book and then kind of wimp out and not finish it. But I just could not do it with this book. I was saying that Tempests and Slaughter kind of didn't really have a plot, but at least the characters were interesting and the writing was good. I hated these characters, and the writing was not great in this book. Also, Veronica Roth, I don't think she was meant to be a real science fiction writer. The place names were confusing. It didn't seem to have a point to have all these places and names. It didn't seem to make sense to have the story set in space. And all the characters had really weird names. I couldn't keep a big issue for me was the names. I couldn't keep anybody straight. I couldn't keep the places straight, because everything was so bizarrely named. She went way too far out of her way to make it feel otherworldly. It felt unreadable. So I didn't finish this book. I also, unfortunately for the time that this is being filmed, I know that a lot of people have complained about this book having strong racist undertones. I guess I didn't really get to those, but guess I didn't read far enough to really get to those. I will say that I did pick up on some strong racial tension in this book, and I will say I was not interested at all to see how Roth would handle that playing out. So yeah, I don't recommend this book. I have no idea where this story is going. I can't even really give you any kind of summary for it, but that's Carve the Mark. Not a fan. A thriller that I read in May was The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. This book I rated 3 stars. It was a decent read. I got through it pretty quickly, but I do have a lot of complaints about the plot. I don't really like thrillers where the main plot device is that the main character, usually a woman who's gone through some kind of tragic life circumstances, is a drunk, an alcoholic. So they're an unreliable narrator because of their alcoholism. I just think that that's a weak plot point, and it's pretty cheap to be like, oh, we don't know what happened because she was blacked out drunk and she can't remember what happened and she has to figure out what happened, and it's just not that thrilling. It's not that exciting. Also, there were like some twists that I didn't really see coming, but there was one twist that Finn like framed as being a big twist that I saw coming from like a mile away. Do I want to give it away? Maybe just skip forward like 30 seconds or so if you don't want to know the twist. But the twist is literally like the Sixth Sense type, like I see dead people kind of twist, where the main character, her husband and daughter have passed away, and she's coping with their deaths by continuing to imagine conversations like on the phone with them. So that for the majority of the book, it's framed like her husband and her daughter are living separately from her, but she's still talking to them. And then the twist at the end is like, oh, actually, they've been dead the whole time. And I thought that was really stupid. And again, I saw it coming from so far away. Like, it was painfully obvious, like, that was going to be the case. So that's that on The Woman in the Window. Not really a great thriller. I don't highly recommend it unless maybe you're newer to the genre and don't have as high of expectations. The last YA book that I read in May was City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. This book I rated 4 stars. I actually found it super enjoyable. It was very fast paced. I'll give it that. There is like no downtime for these characters. And I feel like that also might be a hot take to give it 4 stars, because going into this, I had heard a lot about like this incest subplot. Let me defend why the incest subplot didn't bother me. I wasn't turned off by that for the book because it wasn't written. From what I had heard, I thought that it was going to be some kind of horrifying incest is okay storyline, and that's not it at all. It's definitely written from they didn't know they were siblings, and then they found out that they were, and it's shocking and it's horrifying, and they're just disgusted by the feelings that they had for one another, and immediately cease all those interactions once they find out that they're related. So that's why it didn't really bother me, because it was written, I mean, not that that was a great like twist for her to write, but it was definitely written to be shocking and horrifying. So I was shocked and horrified, but I wasn't like, this is a terrible book and I hate Cassandra Clare. Should I even summarize this book? I feel like I'm the last person in the world to pick up this book and find out what the hell it's about. But so yeah, that was City of Bones. I did really like it. I bought the rest of the series, so I'm super excited to get to jump into that and read the rest of the series. I'm super interested to see where that goes. Before I start talking about my last book, I do want to say I did also read The Grapes of Wrath. I did also read The Grapes of Wrath in May, but I talked about it in my Classy with the Classics video, so I'm not going to discuss it any further here. So the last book I will be talking about is On Mystic Lake by Kristin Hannah. And this is the first Kristin Hannah book that I've read. I think I've read 5 other ones, maybe. This is the first one that I was really disappointed in and rated less than 5 stars. I will say, what was the last one I read? The Things I Do for Love wasn't as good as some of her newer books that I've read. But I still really liked it, still really saw a lot of the things, and still had a lot of things in her writing that I enjoyed. On Mystic Lake really didn't have anything that I enjoyed. I will say this is one of her earlier works that came out in 1999, so I think her writing has improved a lot since then, thank God. I kind of suspected that I wasn't going to resonate as much with this book. It's about a woman who's like 40 years old. She finds out her husband's having an affair, and he tells her that she wants to get a divorce. She goes back to the small town that she's from. I think she had been living in Seattle. That's where most of Kristin Hannah's books are set. But she went back to like the small town that she was from to kind of get away from everything. She ends up reconnecting with her old ex-boyfriend, not even ex-boyfriend. They never really dated. It was just like they were in the same like little friend group in high school, and it was something where they just kind of like missed each other when they were teenagers. They're like, we're not right for each other, but they loved each other. And then when she meets back up with him, his wife had committed suicide. And so he's become this like alcoholic. He doesn't really he has a young daughter that he's not really paying attention to, and the main character, Annie, like turns his life around. She convinces him to stop being an alcoholic. She moves back to the small town. She's not doing anything, so to like fill her time, she starts taking care of his daughter. I mean, I feel like when I'm just describing it, you can see how incredibly boring and also slightly problematic this story is. Basically that this man can't help himself. He just needs a good woman to like help him turn his life around. yeah, I did not enjoy it at all, really. Also, I didn't really like how Hannah's writing seemed to be like, talking about how really this all was good for the main character, Annie, and how she finally realized who she was as a person. And it's like, but Annie, to me, didn't really have much of a character arc. She went from being a housewife and mother for her husband to being a housewife and a mother for a different man, and her role was still like background really to whatever like the man in her life was doing. Like with her first husband, he's like this was he a lawyer? I forget what he even did, but he was like this powerful businessman of some sort, and she was just there to support him. And then she goes back to this small town and rekindles a relationship with this other man, and she's just there to support him. Like, she's still not really doing things for herself. So I didn't really enjoy that book. I gave it 3 stars. Hannah's writing is still beautiful. Her characters are still, I think, well developed. They're flawed, they're imperfect, but they still have their redeeming qualities. But overall, the story and the message of the story, I didn't find enjoyable. So those are all the books that I read in May. Again, not wanting to detract from the conversation going on with racial issues in America. And please check out the description box. Sign petitions, donate money, go to protests, stay safe, and vote. Thanks everyone for watching.